Is it possible to be free from the dark side? And what exactly does redemption mean for Star Wars?
How you get so big getting food of this kind?
Redemption is a commonly discussed theme in the internet corners of the Star Wars fandom, in no small part because of Kylo Ren Solo. One of the big questions going into episode 9 is, will he be a hero or a villain? For some, they wonder how he could not be a villain after everything he's done. For others, they can't see why he should be given any less forgiveness than his iconic grandfather. I'm not here to talk about Kylo Ren specifically, but if his redemption is a topic that interests you, then go ahead and click here and you'll see a video I did in the wake of the Last Jedi release where I discuss what a Kylo Ren redemption might look like. I am here to discuss the nature of redemption in Star Wars, which will of course contribute to a larger conversation about Kylo Ren, which is something I'll revisit as we get closer to episode 9. In this video, which is the start of a larger series, I want to get into just what redemption is. I want to talk about the concept rather than talking about one specific character. So then at this point I'm going to pretend that this is a school paper and go ahead and open up my speech with a definition. According to intimonline.com, redemption is deliverance from sin, which comes from French, which comes from Latin, from a word meaning a buying back or releasing or ransoming, which is a combination of the idea of buying back and to take and procure and other such things. In fact, just about every definition I found used the idea of being delivered from sin. You see, redemption is a highly spiritual process. It's not a scale, and it doesn't necessarily mean a specific payment for a specific error. It really is to do with the idea of sin, and at risk of sounding too much like a church, I want to get into the concept of what that means so we can talk about what redemption is. Sin is so much more than the idea of fibbing or gossiping or breaking the speed limit. Sin isn't just murder because murder itself is wrong. Sin has to do with going against the law of a divine entity. In the case of Star Wars, that would mean going against the Force, or what many would say is the light side. See, what makes sin bad isn't that it's bad. Sin is rejecting the order of things. It's saying your wants, your drives, your will is more important than the desire of the one or the thing that oversees all the other things. It's putting yourself over where you came from. It's the difference between killing for the sake of protecting life, like Obi-Wan when he killed Maul, or killing for the sake of advancing your own goals, such as Maul killing Qui-Gon or Satine. Often the difference is determined by where your heart is. So when Obi killed Maul the final time, he did so to protect Luke, not to avenge Qui-Gon or Satine. And the Force knows the difference. Regardless on if you think the Force has an actual consciousness closer to that of a god, or if you just think of the Force as an energy field that's like a river carving its path through existence, the Force understands what's in a person's heart. So it understands if you're trying to impede its flow, or when you're trying to change it, or if you're trying to protect it. So then sin is really a wrongful act that's in violation of good. It's not just breaking a rule. It's about breaking a rule set by a specific source. For example, speeding isn't necessarily a sin, but if you value your own time and schedule over the safety of others, then arguably that could be a sin. Basically, when you're talking about sin as opposed to just breaking a rule, it's really more about the why than the what. With that in mind, let's talk about redemption. It's being saved from sin. The idea is that redemption is something that can't be paid for, or a goodness that can't just be taken back. Sin is about your heart not being aligned with good. If sin is about your heart not being aligned with good, then redemption is the process where your heart becomes realigned. The video I talked about before discussed how Vader wasn't necessarily redeemed in the sense that if he had lived, he would have had the habits of a good person. He probably wouldn't have. He probably would have had a lot of bad habits to break. Redemption isn't a one and done and never have to deal with it again process, but it's a state where you actively seek to realign your heart as it inevitably falls away. But your heart has to turn. It's not about doing 15 good side quests to outweigh the 8 bad side quests in KOTOR. It's not really a scale system. And this is where a lot of people get confused. Redemption and atonement are not the same thing. Merriam-Webster says atonement is a reparation for an offense or injury. It's the paying back for what you've done. So if I commit a crime and get sentenced to community service, that service is atonement for the crime. but simply atoning doesn't mean my heart has changed. I could be completely unmoved to be different, though I have paid back for what I've done. Atonement often goes hand in hand with redemption, but they're not actually the same thing. So Kylo, for example, could he ever truly atone for everything he's done? Probably not. But his heart could still change. See, redemption is necessarily a spiritual process. So it is a process that one undergoes with oneself and the origin of one's spirit. In the case of Star Wars, that would be a person and the Force. Anakin did not atone for his crimes, but in giving his life for his son, in giving in to what the Force wanted, and not hiding behind his own pain and anger, the Force itself declared Anakin good. We know this to be true because Anakin became a Force ghost. Now, not all good people become Force ghosts, but we've yet to see a true Force ghost of someone who didn't die on the side of the light. What I'm saying is that Anakin as a ghost is a visual cue that he died on the up and up. He had no chance to pay it back, he had no chance to make it right, but the Force knew what was in his heart. The Force changed his value. The Force made him good. Think of it this way. When you get an iTunes gift card, what do you do with it? You redeem it. Redeeming the card means you go to the iTunes store and type in all those numbers and letters yourself because your phone can never scan it correctly, and boom, you get free money. See, the card wasn't the valuable thing. The card is a vessel. It takes you using the card to unlock its true value. A card can't redeem itself. A card won't go around doing card things to gain its inner value. The card needs a more powerful entity to unlock the code to transform it from the vessel into its true self. With all of that in mind, I'm going to look at some famous redemption cases in Star Wars, or in some cases, non-redemption scenarios, through the lens of this understanding and talk about how and why these characters came back to the good side. This series might release a little bit slow because I really want to take the time to kind of research each person or faction that I talk about, so please bear with me if these aren't exactly weekly. But in the meantime, I encourage you to check out my Balance of the Force series. It's a series I'm very proud of, and it's something that I'm probably going to reference a lot during this series, just as I talk about the nature of the dark side and the light, and how I don't think they're intrinsically good or bad. Please leave me a comment of what you thought about this video, what redemption stories you'd like to see me touch upon in this series. If you're not already, please follow us on Twitter and visit port-haven.com for even more. Please consider joining our Discord for all sorts of Star Wars discussion. And until next time, keep it real and fly casual.
Cooking can be fun.